Very good afternoon and welcome to today's live stream. It is the 108th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. Going to be slightly different today due to the fact that we will be talking a little bit about winter. So, yes, it's been a busy old few days, I must admit, with the weather that we've been experiencing here, the here and now, but also trying to build the ideas with regards to the winter. Very good afternoon to Laura Johnson. Thanks very much, Laura, for tuning in this afternoon. We have got currently 8 concurrent viewers at the moment. Hit that like button and share with your friends and family. And if you haven't already done so and you're enjoying the content, please subscribe as well. Good afternoon to Mark Kinnish, and we've got Lisa tuning in as well. I know that you're probably busy packing, Lisa, before your trip to the States. You're saying, sorry, I'm late. Not a problem. You're actually not late. I've literally just went live. So thanks to Lisa for moderating. I know Lindsay will be joining in shortly. She's just home from work, trying to get ready, get organised for putting the dinner on as well. I think we're having roast beef for this evening's dinner, so I'm quite looking forward to that. And yeah, I've been rather busy, as you can see here. Lots of numbers, trying to join years up. Not necessarily going to guarantee that it is all correct, but nonetheless, I am going to put it to you that what I think is the closest years in terms of what we've got at the moment. The La Nina appears to be developing, and the atmosphere appears to be starting to hook up with the cooling of the SSTs over the East Central Pacific. What influence is that going to have later down the road? We're in solar maximum. We've also got a westerly QBO, but we'll look at the details in a little second or two. But I'm going to go through the live chat as usual. Have drop a mention to anybody that wishes to communicate, and also I will try and answer any questions that a few folks may have with regards to either the content, the global extremes that are taking place, or the winter ideas that I'm building. We've got John Bevan as well. Very good afternoon to you, John. Hope you're having an enjoyable weekend, my friend. So Mark says, hi Mark, I saw that awful weather in China on YouTube last night. A person was literally knocked off their bike. I think there was more than 1 or 2 people getting blown down the street, unfortunately, due to severe Typhoon Yagi. We're going to have a look at that. Looks as if it's bulldozed its way across the northern half of Henan Island, just to the southeast of China, and also then moving into parts of northern Vietnam, causing widespread destruction and devastation as well. Some pretty remarkable scenes coming out of this part of the world, unfortunately. And it also looks as if, quite interestingly, we've got upwards of a 90% chance now of development here. This feature, seen by NHC, crossed over the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Now it's over the Bay of Campeche and expected to become a system over the next couple of days. So there's a 90% chance. That's the first time in a long time we've seen as high of a probability for development within the Atlantic Basin. I think the period between essentially mid-August through mid-September, we've seen the quietest period in over 50 years in the Atlantic Basin, which is quite incredible, actually. And I've got some ideas with regards to linking last winter, the summer just gone, with the potential later down the road. So we'll look at all that as well. It might be a little bit of a heavy video today because there is quite a lot of content to go through. I will try and keep it within the kind of 45-minute, 50-minute range in terms of today's stream. So I will try and cram a lot in a very short space of time here. We've got JC also. Hi, Mark. Have we seen any effects of the Saharan deluge yet? Well, we have, and we'll look at that as well. We've had flash flooding in parts of Morocco and Algeria. Due to that, we've also got Gavin on the live chat this afternoon as well. Good afternoon to you, Gavin. I do appreciate you tuning in, my friend. I know you've been busy on your end, trying to work out the ideas with regards to the winter season. I'm looking forward to seeing your second update. I know that has been released, so check that out. Go on the Gav's Weather Vids. Give him a subscription if you haven't already done so. I know many folks here already subscribe to Gavin, but him and the team are doing a tremendous job over at Gav's Weather Vids, so I encourage you to check out his second winter update. And if you haven't already done so, check out the first update that was released last Sunday. He's going to be doing updates all the way through till the release of his winter forecast. I think it's somewhere around the 1st of December, if I'm right in saying. We've also got the Sync Splint also tuning in. Hello to you, and Joyce Vogan down in Kirkintilloch is also joining in. Hi everyone, hope you are all well, says Joyce. Mark says, Mark, do you think the Atlantic will go into the cold phase again in the coming years? I certainly think so, Mark. Obviously, none of us truly know what the future holds, but I would expect eventually some sort of a change in the AMO, or the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. Some very, very interesting, fascinating, odd things going on with regards to the further north convergence zone over Africa. We've been seeing heavy rainfall spread all the way up through the Sahara Desert. We do not often see that. We will look at some clips with regards to flooding in today's stream as well. So it's going to be a biggie, and therefore I'm going to try my best to kind of quickly go through some of the live chat and then skip on to today's content. So as you can see here, this is off the National Hurricane Center website. 90% chance of cyclone formation over the next 7 days. They go on to say that showers and thunderstorms have increased this morning in association with a broad area of low pressure located over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. This system is forecasted to drift slowly northwestwards during the next couple of days, and environmental conditions, which we haven't seen, are expected to become more conducive for additional development. A tropical depression is likely to form during the next couple of days as the system moves generally northwestward and then northward near or along the Gulf Coast of Mexico and Texas through the middle of the week. So we're going to have probably another tropical update. There was one yesterday, talking a little bit about this. This point yesterday, I think it was a 60% chance. So the increase, it's jumped quite considerably between yesterday's video and today. So I will do an updated tropical outlook over the next few days, specifically looking at this system. But generally speaking, hostile wind environment, it's been more, atmospherically speaking, it's been more reflective of El Nino as opposed to La Nina. I think that's been a role in increasing both Saharan dust longer than usual. Usually that's June, July, and then it kind of phases out early August. Wind shear has been stronger than normal over the equatorial Atlantic basin, and we've also seen the intertropical convergence zone, which has been continuously mentioned here on the channel, further north than usual. And my reasons, I believe, for this is fairly simplified, that I think the heat of the Mediterranean and the North Atlantic, and that distortion of unusual warmth further north, not only distorting the wind flow pattern over the Atlantic basin, but it's also pulling the intertropical convergence zone, or ITCZ, further north than usual. So everything's getting pulled north. We've seen an outstanding summer in terms of heat across Europe. Again, that further north subtropical high, I believe anyway, has a lot to do with that. But we're seeing the SOI not crash, but increase in terms of positivity. That is showing that the air pressure between Darwin and Tahiti is what the SOI is. It's a measure of air pressure between those 2 points. And it's now becoming more La Nina-esque as opposed to El Nino. We're starting to slow down the westerlies. We're seeing that the high over the mid-Atlantic and the middle latitudes going north. We're seeing a negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, for example. We're going to see the first surge of cold air from the Arctic this next few days as well. So there's going to be a big change coming up between the warmth that we've seen over recent days and the cold next week. It's going to be a short-lived spell, and it will warm back up again. We're in phase 5 at the moment of the MJO. That typically supports more region and warmth both over Eastern North America and Western Europe here. So there is a lot of things going on at the moment here. We've got Ross Miller, we've got Adam Blunston, Paul James, Lindsay's joined in as well. Thanks to Lindsay for helping out with the moderation along with Lisa. And obviously we've got our good friend Mark Kinnish present as well. So we've got 25 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Do me a favour, hit that like button. Let myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. Looking at North Africa in terms of lightning activity, you can see here that we do still have lots of thunderstorms over Algeria. Look at this line here over Tunisia up towards Algiers on the Algerian coast, along the Mediterranean coast as well here. At one point, the Mediterranean average sea surface temperature was 28 Celsius. So again, another reason I think why everything is just getting pulled further north this year. We also had yesterday afternoon a real line of convection just off the Moroccan coast. So a lot of odd things going on at the moment, I must add. So let's have a look at the broader picture in terms of lightning activity. We've got some over the south of the UK, as you can see here. We've got some over the open Atlantic, various parts of Europe, no surprise there. And then we've got some lightning activity here. We've got this stalled out boundary that's been kind of draped from just off the east coast through Florida, along the northern portions of the Gulf of Mexico in recent times. And we've seen tremendous amounts of rain anywhere from Galveston up into interior parts of Texas, all the way through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Has seen tremendous amounts of rainfall in the last 7 days. And we've got this cluster here of thunderstorms associated with that feature that is likely to develop over the next few days here. Got some thunderstorm activity just off Nicaragua as well here, off the west coast of Mexico. Anything over South America at the moment? No, there isn't really. Looking at Africa, normally you would see all the lightning, by the way, down here within the equatorial belt. But it just shows you here a lack of lightning in areas that you would typically expect to see, lots over areas that you typically wouldn't see, and that being over the Sahara Desert. Moving over across the Middle East, not a whole lot to speak about. There's a lot of lightning activity, if you notice here, over a large area of Turkey at the moment. Not so much over India. And then, of course, down towards Indonesia, we've got some spotty lightning activity showing up, some over Japan, over the central regions of Honshu, and then obviously down towards southeast China, not an awful lot to speak about. And this is where Yagi moved in over recent days. Looking down towards Australia, you can see here some lightning activity between Australia and New Zealand, but not a whole lot going on. So let's have a look at the weather charts, and let's have a look at the CDAS 0.5 data for the first 8 days of September. It has been a reasonably warm start. Kind of similar idea to last September, if you notice. We had some very warm conditions during the first half of September. Then we've seen the NAO and the AO going negative. We've seen a cool spell. I've seen another cool spell, I think, in October. Then it kind of warmed back up, and then we had the cold December. More on that in just a second. But this is the first 8 days looking globally. And we've got a few areas of cold here. Sub-Saharan Africa is firmly below average. We've got southern portions of Africa to the south of the equator, fairly cool compared to average. Then down towards South Africa, we've got some fairly warm conditions for the first week. Look at Europe, again, very, very hot. In fact, the hottest anywhere out with Antarctica for the first 8 days of September. As you can see, very cool across Kazakhstan, if you notice here, warmer than average across Mongolia. Parts of Russia is seeing some fairly cool conditions at the moment here. And then China, very hot down across Southeast Asia, extremely hot conditions continuing. Parts of India below average, south and northwest India into Pakistan is below average. Australia, very, very warm first 8 days of meteorological spring down there. Remember, it's the opposite to here. Then looking across to South America, we've got the majority of it's warmer than average. Look at this warm anomaly down over in Antarctica. Remember, we had another SSW, not a major, but we had a stratospheric warming nonetheless. That's going to be something we need to keep an eye on with regards to our upcoming winter. So looking at North America, quite the east-west split. We had all-time record heat in parts of Southern California in recent days, Burbank being one of them. I think 112 degrees in downtown LA a couple of days ago as well. 121, by the way, in Palm Springs, which is pretty remarkable. I think that is up there with some of the hottest conditions globally anywhere on the planet for early September. And we had a new all-time record for Palm Springs just a couple of months ago, and yet we've managed to achieve 121 degrees Fahrenheit in early September in Palm Springs, which is just ridiculous to say the least. And then obviously it's cooler across the eastern half of the United States. We've even got some snow potential in the upper Midwest as there's an area of low pressure moving in, drawing some of this cold air from northern portions of Canada into the eastern United States. We're going to see some rather chilly mornings and afternoons over the next wee while or so. So looking at Europe here, this is how the past 8 days have looked. Bit of a blowtorch over Central and Northern Europe. Warmer than average across, say, the UK and Ireland. Remember I said to you that we would start to warm things up over northern Scotland. Temperatures as high as 27 in recent days here. Even up above 4,000 feet. I know Annickmore yesterday afternoon, 20.6 Celsius. That height at this time of the year, quite impressive. I think it was 17.4 Cairngorm. Then further south, we've had 28, I think, in and around the Cambridge area. So plenty of heat during the first few days of September. Ireland as well, seeing warmer than average. And across most of Iberia, due to that cut-off low as heights built across the north here, extending into the northern UK. Pressure 1029 millibars up here across northern UK. But that forced the bundling of air over Biscay. Beautiful curl on visible satellites representing that cut-off area of low pressure. Lots of thunderstorms, heavy rainfall, and I have put out on Twitter and Facebook rainfall totals over the last 72 hours, upwards of 100 millimetres in a few spots. So, while parts of northern UK haven't seen a drop of rain, we've seen a near or an entire September's worth of rain over the last few days. So we've got 32 concurrent viewers at the moment. It's a big one this afternoon. Hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. Lots of talk about winter coming up, and we're going to discuss in just a second the winter update for early September. We've got Darth Vader also tuning in. I'm not going to do the impression that Gavin does so well on his channel, but a very good afternoon to you, Darth. Thank you very much for checking out the live stream this afternoon. Who else have we got that I haven't said hello to already? We've got Ross Miller. I don't know if I've mentioned Ross up until now, but a good afternoon to you, Ross. Hi, Mark. Does the autumn get thunderstorms? Did you get it last night? No, we have not had any thunderstorm activity up here, Ross. I think if that is right in what I'm reading, hope I'm reading that correctly, Ross. Adam says this September is slightly different to last year, so hopefully a cold winter this year. Yeah, there's obviously always variables in terms of month by month, year by year. But we got off to a hot start last year. We got off to a reasonably hot start this year. And then I think we're going to see change coming up next week. So let's have a look and see what Twittersphere is showing. I'm going to look at some of the tweets that I've put out over the last day or so, and then we will look at winter. So obviously we had Super Typhoon Yagi moving in, causing a lot of destruction across parts of southeastern China, Vietnam and adjacent areas. By the way, the cool that we're getting next week, this is an interesting tweet here showing that the origins of this air mass coming from the Davis Straits, so between Canada and Greenland, going to draw, dive southeastwards and eventually reach the alpine region of Europe, during the middle portions of next week here. Will we see the first frosts? It's possible next week. It depends on wind and cloud cover, obviously. Cool days may struggle to get much above 10 Celsius. Snow over the tops of mountains. I know Lindsay was saying where she works that there was somebody coming in yesterday afternoon and buying non-perishable goods because there was snow coming next week. It made me laugh. It's crazy how there's one mention of the S word in the media and people all of a sudden start to kind of jump in that. First and foremost, they don't live over 4,000 feet above the surface. And, this is fairly typical to see the first snowfall. It can happen even as early as late August, as well as September. So traditionally, we probably do get the first snows of the season during the month of September here. But it's going to be a taste of autumn at least anyway, and that's probably the best way to look at it. Bit of a shock, obviously, to the system given what we've seen in recent days. But look at this video here of the devastation across parts of southeastern China. Wind farms getting flattened, banana plantations getting destroyed, many buildings getting tore up, ripped apart, and the winds from Super Typhoon Yagi will live long in the memories of people here. I know there's big populations in this area of the world as well. But look at this here. This is actually Halong in Vietnam, and this is a theme park, essentially just getting mangled by the devastating, destructive winds here. So this is Vietnam, like I say, after bulldozing its way across Hainan Island in South China. Obviously, sea surface temperatures 30 Celsius, some of the warmest water anywhere on the planet. A conducive environment, atmospherically speaking, allowed this system to become what it is and was. This is Beecher in Algeria. Obviously, a good... So that rain moving out of the tropics into the Sahara Desert, that is what happens when it rains in the deserts. So that was Algeria, and I'll show you in just a second here what it looked like in parts of Morocco. This is the 72-hour rainfall here. Like I said, over 60 millimeters in some places. I think there's probably a few spots actually over 100 millimeters. Very little to the north of that area. Basically that cut-off low, this boundary separating high pressure with low pressure, created all that heavy rainfall. Do we have any other? This is that banana plantation, by the way, in Guangdong province of China. And the person says, after Typhoon Yagi, a banana plantation in Guangdong was completely destroyed. So... So obviously devastating for the folks that own that plantation, and possibly business ruined there. So this is obviously the consequences of typhoons or hurricanes making landfall, destroying businesses. This, by the way, is parts of Morocco. This is from Volcanic on Twitter, sharing this video. So that's a couple of examples of the heavy rain moving across parts of the Sahara Desert region of northwestern Africa in recent days. This is also a wind farm in Wenchang, Henan. So this is part of that island that was actually under the brunt of the landfall of Typhoon Yagi. 3 killed, 95 injured, according to Jim, based in China. So look at that. Basically, just snapped like toothpicks. These massive wind turbines. So let me just see here what else we have to speak about. Big difference here in the space of a few miles under Har or under complete sunshine. Big difference in temperature, 13 under the Har, 27 Celsius in the sunshine. And over the last 3 or 4 days, while folks have been enjoying summer warmth, we've been trapped underneath that har. There's that visible satellite showing the nice curl of the cut-off low divorce from the main jet. And you can see plenty of sunshine, but har and fret lingering along the English and Scottish coastline here, extending inland where the geography allows the cloud and the marine layer to roll in. And essentially that has lingered in this area of the Cromarty Firth in recent days. Also interesting, dew points have been highest on record for the June through August period globally. Again, warm sea surface temperature anomalies, potentially the response of the Tonga volcanic eruption, the El Nino that we've seen last year as well, all contributing to release of more water vapour into the atmosphere. We have 43 concurrent viewers at the moment here. It's dropped to 41. Massive thank you to everybody for tuning in today's live stream. We are now going to look at winter. It is a little bit long-winded. This is update 1. I did actually do an update back in the summertime, but this is classified as the first update, early September 2024. Let's look and see what my thoughts are. So a little bit of reanalysis connecting last winter, the summer just gone, and the winter ahead, based on Nino transitions and delayed response. So like I said, I'm going to try and rattle through this as quickly as I possibly can. This may take a little bit of concentration, so just kind of bear with me here, folks, and we will look into this in a little bit more detail. Just bear with a second here. I need to pull up the article here because it is considered old now, the way I've done it. So just bear with me a little sec. Right, tell you what. Just hang fire just a sec. Here we go. So, we've obviously got La Nina beginning to develop. It was slow in doing so, but it is now starting to kick in. So in order to improve long-range seasonal forecasts, we must, bless you, look back at what's happened and learn from mistakes. When analysing last winter, we transitioned from La Nina 3 years in a row, very rare, to El Nino. SSTs in the Pacific warmed quite quickly during summer and autumn, but the atmosphere didn't respond. We had a hurricane season much more reflective of La Nina, and that may have proved vital in what happened during the autumn and early winter for the mid to high latitudes. So this was last winter. The active Atlantic hurricane season last year, despite quickly developing El Nino within the ocean, had a lot of fish storms or systems which headed out of the tropics into the mid latitudes. I believe this aided early season blocking and even an early onset to winter in December. The polar vortex was close to average at 10 millibars, but weaker, down at 50 millibars through September and October. This may have helped provide quite a blocky negative NAO, AO, Arctic oscillation or North Atlantic oscillation. When it's negative, it means that cold can release into the mid latitudes. When it's positive, it means that the cold is bottled up over the top of the pole. Then you have stronger westerlies, much more influence of ocean to continent, whether it be North America or Europe. So the negative NAO late in autumn and December, as well as through the first half of January. Frequent stratospheric warmings occurred during the 23-24 winter, and while they may have played a role in the somewhat cold first half of winter last year, the MJO, Mann-Julian Oscillation, which is a pulse of enhanced convection which circles around the equatorial belt, has major influence on the northern hemispheric pattern. But the MJO, I believe, played one of, if not the biggest role, along with the busy late tropical season last year. Like clockwork, when the MJO rolled through phases 4 and 5, which is enhanced convection thunderstorm activity over Indonesia and Australia, we typically turn mild. But when rotating through phases 7, 8 and 1, which is over the Pacific and also over Africa and the western side of the Indian Ocean, as it did in September and October, we had colder spells. By watching the MJO and atmospheric response, a repeating pattern had set up, and I believed December would be cold for northwestern Europe as the MJO was in a cycle of warm then cold phases, possibly enhanced by the tropics in the Atlantic basin. So I hope this is reasonably clear to understand. I know it's quite technical for quite a lot of people, but this is basically the kind of backdrop to my thinking. Many forget that despite the overall winter being mild last year, it was a colder than average first half. So we're talking about last winter. I believe the combo of the tropics, the MJO, and to a lesser extent the weak PV and constant warming attempting to put pressure on the PV was behind the cold. So remember, it was a cold December last year. Here at the house recorded -9 last December. We also had a couple of ice days thrown in there as well. What changed through January? El Nino and the slow but eventual coupling from ocean to atmosphere. In my opinion, so this is based about last winter, in my opinion, the MJO and the SSW proved ineffective once the atmosphere locked on to the warm East Pacific, and this overwhelmed the entire northern hemispheric pattern, supercharging the polar jet over the Pacific, then downstream across North America, the Atlantic, into Europe. Remember February, how mild it was across much of the northern hemisphere. I believe that El Nino took over and then essentially shut down the influence of the MJO and other teleconnections. And then I put in italic here, I had a small theory as to why we observed so many SSWs last year, two of which reversed the zonal winds within the stratosphere. Perhaps the record warmth over Asia and waves of Siberian air sweeping south, forcing the heat to punch from troposphere to stratosphere, a sort of ripple effect within the atmosphere. And that is, I think, why we had these strat warmings quite frequent during last winter. Then we eventually had the SSW later in the winter that they then had effect on the spring and early summer. I did state my concern of the late response to El Nino in my winter forecast last year. This hunch proved correct, and sometimes when you've got a hunch, don't ignore it. That is the take home from that one, I think. With regards to spring, we observed two major stratospheric warmings with a wind reversal of 10 millibars. This likely helped bring the highly blocky pattern back late in spring, lasting into the early summer. Remember, we started summer off with a negative, both the Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation. Cool June, obviously, was the response to that. Regarding the summer, that's just finished. Based on my own observation, the negative AO-NAO, which commenced in May and lasted through the first half of June, ended, and a somewhat return to El Nino may have occurred. So the SOI dropped, and the atmosphere reflected more El Nino. If we look at the SOI in particular, in July, it actually dropped further into El Nino, not La Nina base state. We observed stronger westerlies, also quite a flat flow throughout much of the hemisphere, which then continued through August. Let's blow this up actually just a little bit so you can actually see this for yourself. So hope that is visible to you. I told you it was a wee bit long-winded here, but I'm trying to give you a little bit of backdrop in terms of my overall thinking. I did say I was working hard in recent days, didn't I? And you can see the fruits of the labour, so to speak. So if we look at the hurricane season so far, it started fast, then died off through the second half of July and August as the westerlies strengthened to the north, but also the shear increased through the deep tropics. This is more of an El Nino signature. Is it a coincidence that this all occurred at the same time that the SOI fell deeper into El Nino territory? That's likely why La Nina somewhat stalled in its development, but we're seeing change. It's also just speculation, but I find it also interesting that there was a very slow atmospheric response this time last year as La Nina transitioned to El Nino. While ocean reflected El Nino, the atmosphere reflected La Nina, hence the likely reason behind the unusually busy Atlantic hurricane season in an El Nino year. So that was last year. Typically El Nino dampens the tropical activity in the Atlantic, and it ramps up over the Pacific. And we've seen the opposite taking place this year. So the delayed response between ocean and atmosphere is very important to consider. So what does all the above suggest going forward? What does all this mean essentially? What am I getting at? What's my point? Hopefully this makes sense. So the summer just gone had a very positive AO/NAO, but that may be changing as we go deeper into September. I refer back to La Nina. Check out the cooling that we've seen in just a couple of weeks. So we're now below a half a degree below average in the critical Nino region 3-4, which is in the Central Pacific. Once you get below a half a degree under the average, that would constitute La Nina territory. It's the same with El Nino. When you warm it a half a degree above average, you've got El Nino conditions here. So we're now starting to get there with regards to La Nina. The easterly trade winds have strengthened and waters are responding, but we are now seeing the SOI, Southern Oscillation Index, that is the measure of air pressure between Darwin in Australia and Tahiti in the Central Pacific. The SOI head quite quickly into positive territory. That means the atmosphere is beginning to respond to the cooling of the east central equatorial Pacific. Essentially, La Nina steals momentum from the westerlies while El Nino speeds them up. Early winter ahead, ? My point is that the tropics are slowly showing signs of life with potential recurves away from the tropics into the mid-latitudes. Like last September, we had it started hot, but the AO/NAO is flipping negative. We've seen that last September as well. The slowing of the jet appears to be allowing warmer air trapped within the subtropics to move towards the pole, and then in turn draws colder air to the south. The modelling is all over the cold air drifting south out of the pole into eastern North America and also into Western Europe. So we've got the cold now coming out of the Arctic into North America and into Europe here. And there's the Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation going negative. And that is the first time we've seen that essentially since the beginning of summer. And it may be the response of the SOI going into La Nina territory. So the MJO may drift towards the same phases which added short-lived cold spells last autumn, and the combo of slowing westerlies, phases 7, 8 and 1 of the MJO, and the tropics becoming more active in the Atlantic. All these factors may set off a kind of repeat cycle this autumn and into the winter season. So I think we're going to see the cold drop in south, then it pull back out. So it's a short-lived spell of cold. This is the teleconnections so far. La Nina, a lot of talk about La Nina. We're getting there. Cooling waters within the central equatorial Pacific stalled during the past summer while the atmosphere remained more El Nino as opposed to La Nina. You've already got that. Easterlies are strengthening, allowing the waters to cool over the ocean surface. So I'm going to kind of skip through that. This Hofmuller or Hofmuller chart shows 850 millibar wind anomalies here. The green or the reds represent westerly winds, the blues and purples represent easterly winds. You can see a lot of blue and purple there on the chart showing strengthening easterly winds. The response can be seen in the ocean surface, and I know it's hard to see, but you can see that the water's cooling over the eastern and central Pacific. Part of the reason behind the strengthening of the easterlies and ramping up of La Nina can be attributed to the large-scale rising motion north of Australia and sinking over the East Pacific. MJO phases 4 and 5 is kind of giving the atmosphere a kick and almost mimicking a La Nina type Walker circulation in itself, with winds at the surface blowing stronger from the high sinking motion over the East Pacific to low rising motion over the West Pacific, helping the SOI climb towards a La Nina state. So winds blowing from high to low. Essentially, the greens represent rising in the atmosphere. The orangey colours represent sinking, and essentially the winds blow from that sinking to the risener over the West Pacific, and the stronger those easterly winds, the cooler the waters will become in the Eastern Pacific. So I've explained to you the SOI on the rise and the reasons behind the different types of atmospheric response. We'll kind of go through this rather quickly. There's the overall La Nina circulation within the atmosphere. I've already explained that. This is the new run of the ECMWF for October through December. It shows a stronger La Nina developing on the ECM model compared to previous runs. So the period between October and November, you can see here the cooling now starting to show up stronger over the Nino region here. Note the ECMWF then slightly weakens the cool pool and shifts it towards the Central Pacific in the December through February, making it a more Madoki type La Nina. So it's over the Central Pacific, which means we've got a weak central based La Nina signal here. This is the latest multi-model run here, indicating weak to possibly moderate strength La Nina as we move into the boreal winter. So I'm going to skip slightly quickly through all this here. This is like kind of past La Nina years. I'm not going to bore you with all that. This is the impacts La Nina has on the planet here. You notice here that Europe, the UK, it doesn't feature in terms of direct response from La Nina. We are about as far away from La Nina region than you get, but we have indirect response from La Nina and El Nino. Typically you have with a La Nina colder first half, milder second half of the winter. The opposite happens when you've got El Nino. So how the effects of both El Nino and La Nina are very much indirect due to the distance we are from the source. However, it's pretty well understood that strong El Ninos or La Ninas, so that's strong warming of the waters or strong cooling of the waters of the Pacific, especially against South America, tend to bring warmer winters to both Eastern North America and Western Europe. So essentially the stronger the El Nino or the stronger the La Nina is, the greater chance you have a warmer winter. And then weaker events can be quite the opposite. In fact, obviously 2009-10, for example, it was a weak to moderate El Nino, Central Pacific based. We had the coldest winter since 78-79, for example. So again, there is always caveats to everything that is looked at and analysed here. No El Nino or La Nina is the same. That also has to get taken into consideration as well. So El Ninos tend to lean towards colder second halves of winter. La Nina tends to have colder first halves of the winter. We shall continue to monitor the development of La Nina, but in the ocean and atmosphere, and update its progress in the second winter update. Now remember, we had the coolest summer since 2015 here in the UK, and the coolest CET or Central England temperature for the first half of summer since 2012. And these are the summers that have been warmer than average versus cooler than average. So you have to go all the way back 9 years ago for the last time we had a summer below average like this year. So again, that is built into the analogues and the overall thinking. Incidentally, most of Europe has been hot, and especially so the further east and southeast you go. It's been the hottest summer on record in the southeast. Now, cool northwest, hot southeast Europe summer, aided by a positive AO, NAO, and record strong NAO positive during the month of August, which is quite interesting. This was the upper air setup during the month of August. Very strong negative over positive west to northwesterly flow, if you notice here in the upper levels. So this is actually the 1st of June through the 31st of August. I apologise. You can see here, generally this was the upper air state. Look at the ridge over Eastern Europe, boiling things in the Balkans. So good verification in the models. The NAO went from negative during May and June to strengthening positive during July and August. This is the latest SSTs in both the North and South Pacific, North Pacific, North Atlantic. Again, I'll skip over this here. Not really correlating much to this at the moment here. It really will be later down the road that we need to analyse the specific state of the SST profile in both the North and Pacific and North Atlantic. Westerly QBO. What's a QBO? Quasi-biennial oscillation. That is the mean zone of winds blowing within the stratosphere over the equator. What's the significance of these winds? They periodically flip from westerly to easterly, essentially every other year or whatever. I think it's every 1 or 2 years it goes from one to the other. Tends to be more, I think, based on what I've read, tends to be more westerly than easterly, but I think they're evenly distributed, if I'm being honest. I know folks would probably know better than I would on the live chat, for example. But the west blowing QBO tends to provide an added boost to the polar jet stream, which marks the dividing line between tropical air and Arctic air. The polar jet separates the warm air from the tropics with the tropospheric polar vortex. Remember, there's the stratospheric polar vortex and the tropospheric polar vortex. When the QBO blows easterly, it can, but not always, have frictional effects on the polar jet, causing it and the polar vortex to become weaker, allowing warmth north, cold south, blockiness. Negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation. It has to be said, however, that we've had warm winters with a strong jet and a PV in an easterly phase of the QBO, and cold winters with weak polar jet and polar vortex in westerly QBO. So it doesn't always mean a west QBO is mild and an east QBO is cold. We're in a westerly QBO this winter coming up. And there's the past years with east and west QBOs. Quiet tropical Atlantic following a fast start. I believe the extremely busy mid to late Atlantic hurricane season last year, given the fact it was an El Nino, and the amount of the northward tracks boosted the Greenland North Atlantic block and helped drive a cold start to winter 2023-24. So this is last year. The question mark this year is going to be, do we see an increase in activity? And more importantly than that, do we see these tropical systems moving northwards, helping pump heat towards the pole? That can lead to more blockiness and cold outbreaks as a consequence of that. This year, as of the 5th of September, it's the quietest mid-August to mid-September period in over 50 years. Pretty remarkable stuff, actually, when you think about the forecasts that were put out by many sources. The MJO expected to head eventually east along with the other atmospheric factors. The Atlantic is likely to liven up. So this is the now. The Atlantic basin is likely to become more active later in September and October and possibly extend into the season's final month, the month of November. The busy second half to last season, combined with the MJO slow response of the developing El Nino and the weak polar vortex, likely helped bring the brief cold spells during last autumn and the cold December first half to January before the El Nino overtook the system. So again, I'm linking I know there's differences, but I'm linking last autumn, early winter, last year to this year, and the question mark is going to be, over the next few weeks, what do we see in the Atlantic? Solar maximum. We're at a solar maximum at the moment. We're in the midst of solar maximum. August just witnessed the most sunspots in a single month since 2001. And I know Lisa and others are much more of an expert in terms of the solar cycles and space stuff than I am. So please forgive me if there's a couple of things that is a little bit incorrect. I do obviously appreciate people pointing out things that I've maybe mistaken or said wrong or explained wrong, or maybe my thinking is actually incorrect in the first place. So I am open to correction if I'm wrong. The northern polar vortex is back. We're starting to see that happen. Days are growing shorter, cold growing stronger. We're going to see the polar vortex start to spin faster and faster as that cold pull over the pole becomes stronger. But the forecast models suggest it might be weaker during the late autumn, early winter. So that's another thing to consider. Maybe a better possibility of seeing weaker westerly winds, more blocking, etc., etc. So you can see where I'm hinting at. I'm hinting at the similar start to winter this year to last year. So as cold builds over the pole, the cold pull and westerly winds will strengthen. Models suggest a weaker polar vortex during the October period. I know that's a little bit hard to see. I do apologise for that. You're not going to be able to see that very well at all. So anyway, are you still with me? Told you it was a wee bit heavy and long-winded, but I hope you're enjoying the content. If you are, hit that like button and also subscribe to this channel. It would be much appreciated. We're going to look more and more at winter as we go forward here. So weaker winds circling the PV mean warmth from out with can more easily disrupt the polar vortex, forcing displacement, splits and collapse later down the road. It's more easy for Arctic air to push south towards the mid-latitudes, while a strong polar vortex typically keeps the mid-latitudes milder, with ocean air flooding the continents. And you can see that graphic there showing a weak versus strong polar vortex. We still have 46 concurrent viewers at the moment. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon and sticking with me here. So let's continue. There is, of course, an upper level stratospheric polar vortex and a low level tropospheric polar vortex. And the lower level vortex strength is measured nicely when looking at the Arctic oscillation. When you've got a positive AO, you typically have a stronger polar vortex within the troposphere. The troposphere being where our weather is. The stratosphere is a layer above that. So positive AO suggests strong PV, while negative is a weak and allows colder to push south from the pole. Next week sees the AO going negative. The result is cold drifting south into North America and Europe here, while with the suggestion of a weaker than average polar vortex during October. This suggests more negative AO-NAO episodes and a greater chance of colder spells. So let's continue on. Recent solar maximum years. Cycle 21 occurred in December 1971. Cycle 22, November 89. Cycle 23, November 2001. And that 2001, by the way, is kind of standing out a little bit, and I'll explain why in a second. Cycle 24, April 2014. And Cycle 25, the year 2024. It looks as if it's going to peak early this year compared to previous. Close matches between solar maximum and developing La Nina. This is the July through September period. 88 was the year before solar maximum, and La Nina was developing. 2000, the year before solar maximum as well. The year 2000, 2001 is really kind of standing out in my opinion. Solar maximum 2014 occurred in between the developing La Nina of 2011 and 2016. The combination of solar maximum, developing La Nina and West QBO years. Like I say, I hope this information is correct. But here are the standouts here. So this is also based on a cool UK summer. And you can see that we start off with 1989. It was an easterly QBO, so not coinciding with this year. It was a solar maximum, and the summer was warmer than average. 99 was a West QBO. 2000, West QBO, we have a West QBO at the moment. We're near solar maximum. We are at solar maximum this year. And the summer of 2000 was also cooler than average. 2008 West QBO, but it was a warm summer. 2011 was a West QBO. Solar maximum wasn't involved in that. We were kind of in between maximum and minimum. 2012 was a West going to East QBO. And we had a cool summer in 2012. 2024, West QBO, solar maximum, and a cool summer. And this is an interesting one to hear from Severe Weather Europe. These are analogues based on the developing of La Nina. This is what the upper air pattern for December through February looks when you mix all these years up. So these are La Nina years. 96, 01, 2012, so 01 showing up there, 2012 showing up, 2021, 2020, 06, 2017, 09, 2018. So there's a mixture of warm and cool years with the La Nina, and this is what the upper chart looks like. Bit of a similar look actually to what we've seen just this week. Cut off area of low pressure, very wet, very cool, very unsettled across southwestern Europe. Strong block up towards Scandinavia. That could be a mixture of of colder easterly winds, for example, in that look. This is what the temperatures reflected at 850 millibars or 5,000 feet above the surface. So below average temperatures at 850 extend from the Canaries up through Iberia. UK is involved in this, and much of Europe was below average. A lot of blocking here, North Atlantic, Greenland, and up towards Scandinavia, if you notice here. So this is what it looks like with those years in terms of the December through February period. Quite the opposite to the newest run of the ECM seasonal. And this is the 500 millibars, by the way, for the December through February period. Lots of negative or neutral up above Greenland. A lot of westerly flow, if you notice, a lot of strong pressure to the south, lower heights to the north. That would be a fairly mild signal. Looking at CANSIP, so this is the precip and the 500 millibar anomaly in November through January. We've got a bit of a phase 4-5 look with the MJO, and that unfortunately would kind of reflect what the charts are showing here. So this is the precipitation anomaly. Notice here it's quite dry across the UK and Ireland, but also it would be quite mild also. So negative to the north, positive actually extending across North America, the Atlantic, and into the UK and Ireland. Very strong positive. That would be a mild, dry winter, I think, based on this. And again, phase 4 and 5, which is over the maritime continent between Australia and Southeast Asia. If you've got a lot of convection and the MJO is stuck over that, typically reflects milder over Eastern North America and Europe. So quite the phase 4, phase 5 MJO look with both the ECMWF and CANSIPs, which is the Canadian model. So I kind of wanted to say that 2000, 2001 kind of stands out to me with La Nina, the West QBO, and the near solar maximum back then I'm talking about. But the SSTs are completely different. We're much warmer now in the global oceans as well as the Atlantic compared to 2000. This was how it turned out. So this is the 500 millibar for the winter in 2000, 2001. It's actually quite a cold, that winter really stands out, especially across northern UK. Big snows, very cold conditions. Actually was an impressive winter, more so for the north of the UK compared to the south. But you notice here this negative extending from the north down into the UK and Ireland. Bit of a block here, a little high pressure cell compared to average anyway over southern Greenland and North Atlantic. You see quite a lot of mild over North America in 2000, 2001. Another year that kind of stands out is 2011-12. That was a very cold winter for Eastern Europe here. Less so the further west over the continent you go. Quite a lot of positive here extending from Baffin Straits, Greenland, into the UK and Ireland. Not a particularly cold winter for the UK and Ireland. We did have a cold spell midwinter, but generally speaking, it wasn't much to write home about. 2012-2013 is an interesting one. Remember, that was after a major sun stratospheric warming that we had seen during the month of, I think it was February or late January. We had a cold February and then a very cold, second coldest March in 100 years in 2013. So that's a backloaded winter, which is quite interesting. And that's it. So the southern stratospheric warming is also worth considering. I don't actually give essentially a verdict at the moment in terms of what I think. I think, personally speaking, at the moment, I'm leaning towards a front-loaded winter and possibly a milder mid to late winter. That is kind of where I'm leaning to at the moment here. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? A lot in there. I know it's quite heavy going, I must admit. The time is now just pushing an hour on the live. So, yeah, let me know what you think. There will be another update, probably in early November. There will be a second update, possibly a third, before winter is the winter forecast is released. But it could go either way. There is a lot of things to take into consideration. And I hope you've enjoyed the content here on the channel today. And yeah, feeling a bit knackered now, I must admit. We've got 49 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Before you leave today's live chat, please hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button as well. Massive thank you to Lindsay and to Lisa for moderating today's stream, and I'm also going to ask for a few volunteers going forward as the channel becomes busier as we move towards the winter season. I'm going to ask for a few volunteers about would you be willing to moderate the live stream and help out Lisa and Lindsay, because they are the only moderators that I have at the moment, but it is going to become busier and busier as we go forward here. So my verdict at this moment in time for the winter would be a colder first half, milder second half, or milder mid to late winter here. I'm leaning more towards mild as opposed to cold. Solar maximums with a west QBO can lead to stratospheric warmings, for example. And I do think what happened over Antarctica their past winter could mirror what we see this upcoming winter season. So a major sudden stratospheric warming could throw a real wrench in the works of the mild theme, and we could see a major cold spell this winter. So you could have a major cold spell like 2021 following a major sudden stratospheric warming, and the winter overall still be warmer than average. So there's lots of different variables thrown in here. And I'm going to strive to continue to look at the teleconnections and try and join up the dots in the days ahead and weeks ahead. And I'm also going to look at the next update at past SSWs combined with La Nina, combined with OSQBO, and even matching up similar sea surface temperatures as well. So I'll quickly rattle through the chat and then we'll end there. JL says, hey, I don't think my comments are showing before because ad block was on. Right, JL. Certainly feel free to drop a comment anytime. I hope it can reach me. So a massive thank you to everybody for tuning in. Lisa, Lindsay, JL. Right, okay. We've got Darth Vader. Thank you very much for tuning in, Darth. I hope to see you back again. We had Katrine. A very good afternoon to you, Katrine. I know you've been in for most of the live, but I've not mentioned you so far. So a massive thank you to you for tuning in. Adam Blunston, we've got an advert showing up here. So let me just see. Is there anybody else? We had obviously Mark, Paul James, Ross Miller. Huge thank you to everybody. Joyce Vogan, Gav's weather vids as well. Thank you, and I hope your stream goes well at 6 p.m. Gavin. Craig. We also got Craig as well, which I, for some reason I haven't seen, but Steve R. Collier. Sorry, I'm actually not seeing all these names popping up in the live chat. I do apologise for that. Anyway, we're going to end it there. Laura Johnson as well. Thank you, Laura, for tuning in as well. I hope you have enjoyed the content. Massive thank you to everybody. Be back at the usual time, 4 p.m. next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you with the European Outlook tomorrow. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.